right, good morning everyone. This is Una Daly, the Community College Outreach Director at the Open Courseware Consortium. And I want to welcome you all to our last webinar of the 2012-2013 academic year. And this webinar is on competency-based learning and open educational resources. And we really have a stellar cast here this morning. We have Sherry Leader-Kelly from Learning Counts at the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning. We have Ellen Marie Murphy from Ivy Bridge College, Altius Education, and we have David Schulman from Broward College in Florida. So we have quite an expert group today to talk about interesting and very topical subject of competency-based learning. Before we get started, I just wanted to point out a few things for those of you who might be new to Collaborate. Most of the webinar is going to take place right here on the whiteboard, which is sort of center and to the right on your screen. But on the left-hand side, you'll see a list of participants, and hopefully you'll see your name in there. And you'll also see a chat window, which is usually directly above the participants window. And you may enter in information in there or questions that you have as we go through the webinar. If you are experiencing any technical support issues, you have a number there at the bottom that you can call during the webinar. And for the most part, we will hold the questions to the end, but you can enter them at any time in the chat window. And we will try and answer those in the chat window as we go along, but the actual audio responses will probably wait till the end. I wanted to make one other comment. For those of you who are on the phone, if you're in a noisy area, we ask that you mute yourself, and you do that by typing *6 on your phone, and that way the rest of the participants won't hear the noise in the background. All right. If you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself, please do so in the chat window. Type in your name and what organization or college you're with, and thank you for those of you who have done that so far.
Are we supposed to be on the Blackboard Collaborate page?
Yes. Is this Ron again?
Yeah, it is.
Ron, you may want to call the tech support folks if this is your first time on the webinar, okay?
All right. So tech support where I work?
The tech support at CCC Confer.
Okay, so where's the number is on the... If you just give me the number, I can call them myself.
Sure. Let me just go back. The number is 760-744-1150, and the extension is 1537.
Okay. I'll give them a call then.
Thanks.
All right, thanks.
All right. Now I'd like to ask folks to let us know where they're from. And you can do that by going to the vertical toolbar, which is right between the participants list and the white screen. And if you pick up that star in the middle there, you can go ahead and drop it somewhere on, go ahead and click on that, and you can drop it someplace on the globe indicating where you're from. As you know, the Community College Consortium is part of the Open Courseware Consortium, and we are a worldwide global organization, although the members of the Community College Consortium are in North America at this point. Okay, we have a nice distribution around the United States, Northwest, Southeast, Northeast. Excellent. And I'm in California, so I should drop mine someplace in the more southerly part of the western section. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So our agenda this morning is a brief introduction to the Community College Consortium for OER, and then we're going to get right into hearing about the Learning Counts project at CALE. Secondly, we will hear about personalized learning and OER at Ivy Bridge College, which is part of Altius Ed. And our third presentation will be from Broward College Consortium about covering their competency-based MOOC that just started last week, and also other OER initiatives that
yeah, hi, I'm at the Blackboard Collaborate site. I'm not able to log into a teleconference.
Ron, can you mute yourself right now?
I'm sorry.
Thanks. All right. And then we'll have Q&A at the end.
OER webinar, competency-based learning.
So the mission of the Community College Consortium for OER is promoting the adoption of OER to enhance teaching and learning. Our primary goal is expanding access to education. And we do this through professional development opportunities for our members. And this webinar, of course, is part of that. We also do a lot of online and in-person workshops to help folks to find high-quality OER to use in their classes. And our focus is the community colleges, although we certainly do participate with the larger higher ed space. We do focus on the faculty, staff, and students at community colleges. And here is a map of our members throughout the United States, and also we have members in British Columbia.
Is that a question?
And we'd love to have you join us as well.
That's where I am, yes.
If you're not currently a member. All right, well, let's get to the topic at hand today, which is competency-based learning and OER. Competency-based learning is really gaining traction in higher ed. I think many of you have probably seen recent articles in Wired Campus and the Chronicle of Higher Education. And it is, colleges are striving to personalize the student learning experience while trying to make the most effective use of time and money to achieve degree completion. And so competency-based learning is one of those strategies towards achieving those goals. And in kind of a nutshell, students are allowed to demonstrate their mastery of material at their own pace, and this is often done through e-portfolio assessments or on-demand tests, rather than having the student take a test based on the college's timetable, either the quarter or the semester. So students are allowed to really pace it for what works for them. And as institutions are exploring these options for competency-based learning, prior learning assessment, open educational resources, including open courses, have become really important methods for sourcing learning materials for students. And so we are going to hear from three experts about this topic and the innovations that are occurring in this area to help students. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Sherry Leader-Kelly. She's currently the Vice President for Learning Counts at the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning. Learning Counts is an online prior learning assessment service for all adults. Sherry's work at CALE encompasses working with states, systems, and institutions on degree completion, adult learner needs, and prior learning assessment. And she has worked throughout her career on issues of access and success in higher education for historically underserved first-generation and adult students. And it's now my pleasure to turn it over to Sherry.
Thank you very much, Una. It's really a pleasure to be here. What I'm going to be talking about today is how to leverage OER with prior learning assessment. First of all, a word about CALE, for those of you who are unfamiliar with us. We are a nonprofit that is dedicated to linking learning and work. The work that we do at CALE has been principally around prior learning assessment, having established the quality standards that are used today to measure quality in prior learning assessment programs. We are actually recognized by all of the regional accrediting bodies. So why now? Why are we talking about competencies now and about learning outcomes? I think the principal drivers are on this graph, and that is the unusually large number and growing number of learning opportunities that are available for free on the internet, combined with the economic pressures of cutting higher education budgets, and then you combine that with the changing profile of learners. As we all know, we're at the end of the echo of the baby boomers demographically, and we will be seeing declines now for recent high school graduates going forward. And for many states, this means they really need to focus upon their adult learners in re-engaging them and helping them to complete credentials and degrees and be more employable within the state. Of course, technology has had a lot to do for this too. You could do for this whole movement as well. Prior learning assessment, just according to Cale's definition, because we all sometimes think of PLA in different ways. So for the purposes of this discussion, we talk about PLA as encompassing all of the methods you see here on the screen. It's a matter of being able to demonstrate your college level learning, and that learning can come from on-the-job training, formal training, and what you learned just in the course of doing your work. It also comes from, as I mentioned, web resources such as OER, MOOCs, intellectual pursuits if someone is particularly interested in Civil War history or maybe is an art buff, and military service. A lot of that has been evaluated by the American Council on Education as worthy of college credits for their special schools. But a lot of veterans in particular have college level learning that may not be reflected in those ACE evaluations, and of course through volunteer service. The reason why I kind of say what was old is new again in talking about credit for prior learning or prior learning assessment, because it really has become an important strategy in improving degree completion. There's an increased emphasis on retaining the students we have. Some states are moving to performance-based funding, and also on reducing student debt overall as student loan debt approaches $1 trillion in the U.S. But I think most importantly, it's new again because of the free learning opportunities and you being able to use technology to scale these assessments of prior learning. So here's just a very simple slide that actually reflects a rather large study. Cale in 2010 published a report called Fueling the Race to Post-Secondary Success. In that study, 62,475 student records were examined and essentially placed into two categories. The one category was for students who did not have any prior learning assessment credits on their transcripts. And the other category, represented by the bar on the right, was where there was some reflection of PLA credit on the transcript. And for the purposes of this study, the PLA credits could be any form, whether that's a CLEP test, advanced placement, or even a portfolio. And what we found, when you look at the light blue, the bottom of the bars here, over a 7-year period, is that the students who did not have prior learning assessment credits graduated, and about 6% of them graduated by the end of the 7-year term, as opposed to the ones with PLA credits, 13% graduated over that 7-year period. So associate degree students are twice as likely to persist to graduation if there is some recognition of their prior learning. There are two ways to actually implement a solid PLA program at your institutions. One, I call it the DIY, and the other is to use learningcounts.org, which I'll be talking a little bit more about here. And when you do it yourself, and Cale can help with both of these, and actually when you're starting up any PLA program, it's really important to set up a task force with faculty representation. Because the bottom line is the faculty are the ones who are saying whether or not credit can be awarded. So we need to involve them right at the beginning of the process. When you do it yourself, you need to make sure all departments are involved so that you will know the extent to which they will recognize prior learning assessment. You need to make sure you have faculty development and training around assessment. And you need to have some sort of a coordinator on campus, somebody where students can go and ask questions and get the information they need. Now, the learning counts route, which is really the scalable route, what we do is we help, we become your prior learning assessment department behind the scenes. So institutions refer their students to Learning Counts, and Learning Counts guides those students towards the PLA opportunities that will best suit them. This could be through an Excelsior College examination, a CLEP, a DSST exam. We always promote exams first. It could be by helping them find their military transcripts, or it could be, if they're an appropriate candidate, it could be through portfolio assessment. So when you think about all of the things that are happening around us right now in terms of free learning opportunities, Learning Counts can really do a great job of evaluating the learning that comes from these kinds of learning opportunities. It all begins with the free PLA credit predictor, and this is a tool that you can recommend to your students at any time. What that does is it helps students to align their experiences and knowledge and expertise against different kinds of PLA credit vehicles. So it takes the student through very simple questions. It's just a check here or check there. And then at the end of the credit predictor, which is done in about 5 minutes, the student receives a report that shows them which exams might be best for them to take in order to demonstrate their learning, how to order any...
All guests have been muted. You can unmute your line by pressing *6.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you. I just got the mute message, so I wasn't sure. So actually, students would be able to review the output of this credit predictor and really have a better idea of what kinds of prior learning assessments might work for them. If they choose to go through a portfolio route, and if they go through Learning Counts actually provides 2 courses, one 4 credit or 3 credit hours, and one that is non-credit, where the student can take the course and learn how to develop the portfolio. And then the portfolio is sent to our national pool of Kiel-trained faculty assessors according to the subject matter. So if the portfolio is in marketing, it would go to a marketing faculty member, who then makes the determination as to whether credit is awarded. And then that is then transcripted on an NCCRS transcript or a Learning Counts transcript. This is an example. This is the first screen that a student sees when they use the College Credit Predictor. This is the only information that is used to identify the student. So it's a very non-intrusive method, and the plan can be emailed back to the student, or if the student doesn't want the plan emailed to them, they can just look at it at the end of the results are there at the end. This is essentially the Learning Counts student experience. The bottom line is any student can go to learningcounts.org and seek advising around prior learning assessment credit. So whether they're interested in a CLEP or any other examination, or just to find out how they might be able to leverage their learning. Right now, about 50% of Learning Counts students come directly from Google searches, and 50% come from our partner colleges and universities that use us for their PLA. Just to give you an idea of a Learning Counts portfolio and how it's put together, at Learning Counts our portfolios are based on a course match methodology. So if one of your students feels that they know the subject matter within a particular course, they would use your course catalog, and they would need to demonstrate that they have achieved the same learning outcomes as a student who takes your course in a traditional manner. And not only do they need to do that, but they need to provide evidence that what they're saying is true through supporting documentation. To give an idea of where portfolio credits are being awarded, at least through Learning Counts, you'll see that in this graph that it's fairly well balanced. Many of us would presume that most of the credits being sought would come from business, based on work experience. But as you can see, we have a number of credits that are coming out of the liberal arts or general education core type areas. Learning Counts success rates. About 87% of our students, when they complete the portfolio, are able to make a case and be awarded credit. Where it says partial credit is earned, that means that the student may have requested credit for 3 courses but only received credit for 2 courses. We do not award partial credit within a course, so a student would not be awarded 1 credit hour for a 3 credit hour course because they only demonstrated part of the learning outcomes. For us, it's all or nothing. The remaining 6%, let's see, yes, the remaining, the smaller part of the pie, the 6% there, are students who did not receive any credits. And generally speaking, these, the students sort of self-identify before they get to the portfolio. They realize, having gone through the course, that they may not have enough learning or they haven't quite achieved college level learning. But for those who do not succeed in demonstrating the learning, it truly is because either they haven't paid very good attention to how to put the portfolio together and really make the case, or they simply just do not have college level learning, and we recommend that they take the courses. We don't send them back through again. An interesting model that we're working with now for the Saylor Foundation in terms of OER is that we are working to embed a portfolio template within their online courses themselves. So if you're not familiar with the Saylor Foundation, they provide a number of free online courses that anyone can take and learn from. And these courses could actually be aggregated to a degree. So the problem has been typically in how do you recognize those courses for credit. You don't know who the students are, you aren't sure what all they've done. So in this model, what we're doing is we've picked a couple of courses that we want to do in a pilot, and we will embed the template within the courses. So as a student progresses through the course, partway through the course they'll be prompted, are you interested in earning credit for this course? And they will need to be able to put their work products from the course, assignments, into the template, and then do an integrative kind of reflective experience at the end of the course that will also be a part of the portfolio. All Learning Counts students, regardless of wherever they happen to access our portfolio development, will know the answer, if credit has been awarded within 2 weeks of the evaluation date. Usually it's less, usually it's a matter of days. And again, these credit recommendations go onto a transcript and will be sent to your institutions for recognition. If you are interested in learning more about what we do here at CAEL, either to set up your own prior learning assessment program so that you can recognize all of the abundance of learning opportunities out there, or if you would like to become a Learning Counts partner, it's very easy. You can simply email us or go to the learningcounts.org website and let us know that you are interested. It's really important to know that this is not credit for experience, this is credit for learning. And all of the credit recommendations are done by faculty assessors in the subject matter area for which the credit is being sought. and they've all been trained by CALE in how to assess portfolios. And it's really important for you to take a look today at your policies regarding ACE credit recommendations, NCCOER, which is the National College Credit Recommendation Service recommendations, so that you can receive these transcripts and actually make them work for your students. As a side note, we also do a lot of work with tax grant recipients, and many of you who are working now on your tax requests that'll be due in August. In order for us to be able to do all of this work, we thankfully have lots of foundation support. Illumina and Kresge in particular have been very generous to us and are helping us to reach more and more students every day and provide this quality service. So we really like to do a shout out to them. So thank you very much for your time today, and look forward to your questions.
All right, thank you very much, Sherry. Great presentation. There are a couple of questions in the chat window which we won't have time to address now, but Sherry, if you want to answer any of those in the chat window as we go along, that would be fine, or we'll come back to them at the end.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Excuse me. Our next speaker this morning is Ellen Marie Murphy, and she is the Executive Director of Curriculum and Learning Systems at Ivy Bridge College, Altius Ed. Ivy Bridge College provides a direct path and support services for students to achieve an associate's degree online and transfer to a public or private four-year institution. Prior to joining Ivy Bridge College in the last few weeks, actually, Ellen was Director of Online Education at Empire State College in the New York State University system, and she was their representative to the OpenCourseWare Consortium. Ellen was also recently added to the roster of Fulbright specialists in the field of curriculum instruction and e-portfolios, and she serves as co-chair of EDUCAUSE's Blended and Online Constituent Group. It's my pleasure to turn this over to Ellen.
Thanks, Una, and welcome everyone. So glad that you're all here. So I'm just going to go to the next slide. As Una mentioned, I am currently at Ivy Bridge, Altius Education. But as she also said, I've only been there actually 2 weeks tomorrow. So I'm definitely a newbie. And 3 weeks ago I was at Empire State College. So I thought I would speak a little bit about competency-based learning at Empire State College before I go on to more detail about Ivy Bridge. So at Empire State, students are tasked with designing their degree programs. And every student is required to take an educational planning course and also planning and finalizing your degree program. So the degree programs often include independent studies based on what the student believes they need in order to achieve their goal. And this can include or be based on OERs, including open courses and MOOCs. In addition to that, Empire State has actually been awarding prior learning assessment for a number of years and continue to do so. They're working on ways to incorporate credit for badging and certificates earned through MOOCs, and are also the lead in the State University of New York's Open SUNY initiative, which will bring PLA to all of the campuses in the State University of New York system. And so that's quite a wonderful thing for students. On to Ivy Bridge. Ivy Bridge is a 2-year college, transfer college that prepares students to transfer to 4-year universities if that is their goal, and if not, they do get an associate's degree when they complete the program. Ivy Bridge has a number of initiatives and ways that they do competency-based education. This ensures that the college is student-centered and it reduces time to completion. So I'm going to talk about a few specific examples that will more clearly explain what we mean by competency-based education. The first is what we call self-directed placement. When students begin college, many times they're not ready for college-level writing and reading. And many of our students are first-generation adult students who haven't been in college for a while or just don't really feel confident or prepared for college-level learning. Most colleges assess students and then place them in some type of remediation program. But at Ivy Bridge, we decided it was better to have the students place themselves, which would give them more control over their own education and less resistance perhaps to taking a remedial course. So the way that this works is that students are first asked to take a survey that contains questions meant to help them reflect on their previous experiences and skills. And then they're asked to read a brief text and write a paragraph. After that, they're asked to reflect on those experiences. And then they can access the syllabi and are asked to review a B-level paper from each of the 3 English courses that they can choose from. So the choices are English 100 and then English 140, which is a developmental course, and then English 141, which is the equivalent of Comp 1. So there's 2-level developmental courses and then the college level Comp 1 course. The students choose where they believe they should be placed, and what we've found is that most of them choose English 140, which is the developmental course, and that is actually where we, before this method, place the majority of students. So it seems to be working, and the students are much more receptive to the developmental English course when they choose it. The second example of competency-based learning is our competency math course, and this is a self-paced course. So the entire course is open all semester, and students can go through it at their own pace. They can finish early if they want, and then they can go back and continue to improve. This allows the student to choose their own grade more or less, in that they can build competency by repetitive practice, and then it would be based on the effort and time they wish to put in. We are also in the midst of developing a technology-facilitated but faculty-adapted course on college writing. So a lot of courses that are fundamental courses that are competency-based often rely heavily on technology, and the technology is what moves the student along. But in this case, the course is adapted by the faculty member. So the way that this works is that there's a diagnostic pretest and an initial writing assignment to determine the skill building focus for this individual student. And there's live weekly one-on-one meetings with the instructor, because these are all online, where an adapted path is assigned for the student based on course adaptation guidelines and performance on the diagnostic tests. There's also a metacognitive assessment that they use to develop their path. There are skill builder modules and assignments that are adapted for personalized target skill development. There's an adapted assignment pace, so if the previous week's writing assignment is successful, the student can move to the next assignment, and if not yet showing targeted skill mastery, they will be reassigned or given a new assignment to work on. The metacognitive assessments, the students rate their level of effort and level of confidence as part of the diagnostics and the feedback process. And this is a course that we are currently building. What supports all this is Helix, which is a course management software, learning management platform specifically designed for competency-based learning. Most learning management systems aren't developed for competency-based. And so we had to develop something that was, and we call this Helix. It's a learning platform that allows students to move more quickly through the material they already know. It uses storytelling to provide learning in a real-world context. The courses are not time-dependent, so there's a choice of pace. We also use a lot of data. It has a really strong back end for collecting all sorts of data and giving us all kinds of analytics to track competencies and analyze the courses on 3 levels, which is the instructor level, how the instructors are doing, the content, how students are doing with the content, and then also the design, the instructional design of the course. The analytics can tell us if there's a problem with the design, which is pretty unique. One of the other nice things in talking about the data is that we can measure competencies across the program. So we're not only concerned with the competencies that are vertical, but also horizontal. I'd like to talk a little bit about the discussion boards, for example. So in the discussion boards, when we talk about metacognitive skills, the students, before they post to the discussion board, there's a little drop-down menu, and they have to select whether their reply to the post of their colleague is contributing more information, whether it's agreeing or disagreeing. So it allows them to think a little bit more about what they're doing when they're responding to their colleague. And analytics on the choices and how these are scored allow us to see the metacognitive development of the student. We also have rubrics that measure competencies across the student's program, and one way is to have multiple rubrics for particular assignments where the teaching professor assesses the core content, but another professor, say like an English professor, will be sent the material and a different rubric to grade the writing. That's one method. Another method is that we develop grading workshops for faculty for norming the expectations across the curriculum. We also measure their problem-solving capabilities, critical thinking skills, and other things like that based on the activities that are in the learning management system, like, for example, the discussion boards. And this is just an example of the kind of analytics that the student would see and even the instructor. In talking about OERs and open resources, we are committed to incorporating open educational resources in our courses. I know that when I attended the OCWC's conference in Cambridge about a year ago, there was a lot of talk about colleges wanting to develop OERs, but not so much using OERs. There's a lot of reasons why colleges and faculty have trouble using OERs, which we could go into at some point. But the main thing is that we are committed to using OERs, incorporating them. So we're actually considering now hiring someone whose specific job responsibility would be to provide OER sourcing capabilities. And in addition to that, we're working on building some relationships with My Open Math, Lumen Open Course Framework, and a number of other open institutions to incorporate their what they produce into our courses. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Ellen. And we're so happy to hear that you're working on incorporating OER into the program at Ivy Bridge.
Thanks, Una.
All right, we're going to move on to our next speaker at this point. And I'd like to introduce Dr. David Schulman. He's the Associate Vice President of Online and Instructional Technology for Broward College in Florida. And in this position, his responsibilities include the growth and quality of Broward College's online and blended certificate and degree programs, plus the implementation of current, new, and emerging instructional technologies that can improve teaching and learning regardless of delivery mode. And David is going to talk about the competency-based MOOC that they just launched last week and other OER initiatives at Broward College. David?
Yes, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I will just take a trip back to the 1990s to begin with and talk about the role of competency-based learning in Florida. And at that time I was working for the Miami-Dade County Public School System, and we started going down a track of looking at competency-based learning where we would identify the unique competencies that students needed to master and then have those be parts of the assessment, and in some cases have students do things, for example, explain how they got an answer, and basically looking to have a demonstration of the competence to use the knowledge that they would learn, which I think is very much aligned with the competency-based movement now. And that curriculum actually became part of the Sunshine State Standards, which are our state standards for K-12. Part of the project when I was with Miami-Dade County Public Schools was working with IBM and a product they called the Learning Village, and that was developing, we didn't call them OERs at the time, but that was developing materials, lesson plans, and so on for all the teachers in the district that were aligned by the grade level and by competency. So it's been interesting to see the kind of the growth and how this has become part of the higher education landscape as well. As an example of that, when I go to the next screen, you'll see something that is now very, very familiar, but back in the 90s it was took a little bit to get our heads wrapped around it. And that's taking a subject, breaking it down into competencies, and then figuring out how you evaluate those competencies. In the competency-based curriculum that we developed, we would look at components, which would give the conceptual framework that we were looking at, the objectives, the actual activities that the students would be engaged in, and the competency, which represented really what the students should be able to display and demonstrate as part of what their learning is. Of course, there is one exception. We didn't allow students to complete early, so you couldn't go in 3rd grade and graduate a few years later from 12th grade. So we still had to put them through 12 years of school. It's a little bit different in some ways to the higher ed initiatives going on now. With the latest thing we've done as far as competency-based learning goes is we have a MOOC available now on the Canvas network. And this MOOC was developed in response to the developmental ed population that we have and some of the issues surrounding it. For example, students not being prepared when they take their college entrance exam and getting into developmental education and perhaps never getting out or quitting altogether. So we decided to build a MOOC that would address reading, writing, and math so that students in the high schools, or actually, of course it's open to anybody, could go in and prepare and get college ready, and before they took any entrance exams, they would be in a good shape and well versed and feeling that they had some degree of competence in those subjects. So very similar to what we were looking back at in the 90s, just perhaps some of the headings are slightly different, but we're looking at the basic ability to pull out particular objectives that we want students to cover and looking at competencies that they will be assessed on that will then determine that they have achieved that. So this became a very good model for the MOOC, because with the MOOC we were really opening a course up to we didn't know who. We have a better sense now. We have over, I think, 840 students taking the MOOC at the moment. And obviously to teach a regular linear class to that many people and people who are coming in at different times with different needs, it just wouldn't work in a traditional way. And so the use of the competency-based approach made the most sense. Because for one thing, it does allow the student to have a personalized approach to that subject. They don't have to cover absolutely everything. They don't need to cover information they have learned before in a way similar to accelerating through prior learning. And result of this is that hopefully the student only spends time on what they really need to know. So it's an efficient way of doing this. The other efficiency is that for the 3 faculty who we've assigned to this course, for one in each of the subject areas, reading, writing, and math, it really would not be realistic to expect them to have a start and a stop and to work in a traditional setting. So in this respect, they are very much facilitators and coaches, whatever word you would prefer to use, and are there as subject matter experts who can help the students at any point along the way should they require it. And I put in there that we had 760. It's grown a bit. We have over 840 students taking this at the moment. And one of the decisions we made was that although we do have in our SOS, our college readiness courses, we do have different types of textbooks that are applicable. We wanted to make sure that this was very encouraging and free for students so that they would be happy to take this course and not have any financial burden. And for that reason, there was no textbook assigned, and the materials within the MOOC in each subject area are open resources that have been chosen specifically for each particular competency. At the moment, we are waiting to hear from the state of Florida because we applied for a grant program the state has to provide a MOOC for developmental reading, writing, and math, as it happens, for the state. And although we've developed it, what we're looking to do is take it to the next level and overlay all of those content areas with game-based learning. And ultimately, and what we put in the grant as well, what we want to do is to be able to disaggregate all of the content so that we could put it, and I hope Robin Donaldson is here from the Orange Grove in Tallahassee, but we would be able to package this and put it either as a whole course or as unique assets in the Orange Grove, which is Florida's Learning Object Repository. Because not only are the elements OER, but the MOOC itself, if anybody wanted to pull down the MOOC, is of course an open resource for everybody who wants to use it. We're also embarking on a new track in terms of our course development for our online and our blended learning, which is a very deliberate effort to make sure that we are only using open resources where possible. And it's not a pure science. For example, we have just put on a computer literacy course which has no textbook, but we are still using the adaptive learning materials and the simulations that go with that particular course. So we've got a bit of a mix and match going there, but we really do want to make sure that we have high quality courses with really good OERs that we can help to hold down costs with. And part of that, as you all know, the headache of OERs is curating and maintaining them. And we do have a contractual arrangement with our faculty developers, and for a period of time, it's typically 3 to 5 years, they're responsible for making updates to the course. So we are hoping to build that in, and that'll be one way that we will be able to manage our open resources more effectively and make sure that things are current and continue to exist within those courses. We are looking at a contract with Flat World Knowledge for our next academic year, and as you know, Flat World does not charge, but what we would do in cases where we needed to use Flat World content is we would underwrite the cost of that material so that we would still be, as much as possible, rolling out courses that did not have those additional costs. In, I put January 2014, this is actually, there are a couple of things rolling out. Our department itself is rolling out an AS in Business Administration in January 2014. We are rolling out 2 versions of this. One is going to be traditional, and it's going to be fully based on open resources. And it will also be an accelerated program. And after that, we are going to take that and develop it as a competency-based course as well. So this is really a new way of looking at it, in part facilitated by the analytics and the competency tools in our own learning management system that's allowing us to take this particular track as we develop these kinds of courses. It helps to a great extent. We do have a TACT grant as well, and for those of you who are familiar with those, they do have a strong linkage, I think, to prior learning assessment, in that these are grants that are looking at, in many cases, working adults, veterans, people who are returning to school, and come there with certain knowledge and competencies under their belts. We're in a grant program with Sinclair Community College and Austin Community College, where we are developing a set of IT grants that the one we're developing will be live this fall. And these are developed with the assistance of Western Governors University, which has been a great learning experience for us, because they've come down on repeated occasions and walked us through their particular model of using OERs, doing competency-based learning, and we're starting to develop our version of that within our system from all of that. And so we're pretty excited about that particular program opening up very shortly. As far as the future goes, I think a lot of the things I've heard today are relevant to us, and I heard about affordability to some extent coming out, as it does, especially with the vast amounts of student debt out there. And we're looking at using OERs wherever possible. It's just a track that we want to get into, we want to succeed in it, and we think it offers a lot of value to the students. Plus, as for our Broward College online program, we're looking at this as an opportunity to have several signature degrees that we can offer that are not only accelerated, but highly affordable because of the reduced cost. We also have a governor who has put a challenge down for a $10,000 bachelor's degree. Some of you may have something similar in your states. And this in itself obviously lends itself to OERs in terms of getting to that $10,000 mark. So as we go forward, we will be increasingly using competency-based learning for certificate and degree programs, and also systematizing through our course development agreements, our contractual agreements with faculty, how we make sure that as we develop these open resources, they are indeed being maintained and curated and improved upon all the time. So that's a synopsis of what we're doing at Broward to serve our students better, to give them acceleration and also high quality, affordable education. And with that, I thank you for your time, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, David. Wonderful presentation, and so great to hear you thinking about the sustainability of the programs going forward. We've had some great questions in the chat window. We're going to go to those in just a moment. I just want to bring you back for 1 minute here. And once again, say please do join us at the OCW Consortium. We would welcome you. It's a great way to stay in the information loop. We have lots of collaborative opportunities, including these webinars and our advisory board. CCCOER is really dedicated to making our members and their projects visible and helping you with collaborations. I want to ask you to help us choose fall webinars. We will have another 5 webinars starting in September on different topics. And if you can help me here by, there is a number of horizontal icons right under the participants header. Actually, it's probably under my name. And the one on the far right has a number of letters in it. If you click on it, you can select one of these options. A is finding open textbooks. B is going mobile with OER. C is MOOCs at community colleges. D is universal design in OER. And E is TACT grants and other OER projects. So once again, help us out by typing something in there if you can. Or if you can't figure out our interface there, please feel free to type something into the chat window about what kind of fall webinars you would be interested in. All right. Thank you for your responses there. We got quite a wide variety, so appreciate that. And I had a quick, what if I want more than one? If you want more than one, just go ahead and type it in the chat window, and I'll leave my email will be at the end if you want to give me more advice on that. All right. Thanks again. Just wanted to let you know we will be at some upcoming conferences over the next few months. We'd love to see you there. Here is our website if you want to get in touch on more events. And now I want to take you back to the questions we have in the chat window. I'm going to take us back to one that came in a little bit earlier, and I think it was directed at Sherry's presentation. And it was asked, how does Learning Counts work with the local accreditation boards? In the West, where I'm located, it's the Western Accreditation Board, it's WASC. And I know each region throughout the country has their own accreditation board. Sherry, could you answer that? How does Learning Counts work with them, or do they?
Oh, sure. Yes, we actually maintain good relationships with all of the regional accreditors. I know there was a person that asked if we were accredited. Learning Counts is not accredited since we're not an educational institution. Ralph Wolf, actually from WASC, was on our founding advisory board that helped put Learning Counts together. So we got input from the regional accrediting bodies in order to even form the Learning Counts model. All of our principles for quality at CAEL are adhered to in learningcounts.org, and those are the principles generally referred to when accrediting teams come in to look at PLA, if they should look at PLA at your institution. I will actually be speaking very shortly, and I think it's in 2 weeks, at CHIA, the CHIA conference in DC, which has representation from all of the regional accrediting bodies, and they want to learn more about outcomes assessment, Learning Counts, and competency. So we have a very good relationship with all of them. And we have institutions actually as partners within all of the 6 regions.
All right, thank you, Sherry. All right, let's see. I think we had some questions about the MOOC as well, and these probably were directed at David. One question we had was, how do 3 faculty assist, I guess, 840 students? David, can you answer that?
Yeah, so far nobody's been banging on my door screaming at me, so I'm assuming that it's going fairly peacefully. But the way it works is everything is very simplified by competency, very unified in design, so we're hoping that for the student it's an easy trip through. As they go in, they take an exam, the exam tells them exactly where their weaknesses are, and they can remediate those with content. They can use self-assessments as they go through to check their learning, and then they can take a post-test to see if they got there, and they can go through as many times as they want. The faculty, frankly, I thought they would be overwhelmed, and they're not. So the model seems to be working fairly well for students to go in, be somewhat independent, and only reach out for help when they need it. But it was a real change in mindset for the faculty, because they were just eager to get out there and start doing stuff as opposed to waiting for people to come to them with issues. So far, and the other thing is we have 3 faculty, but they're broken down by subject area. So within each subject area, they don't all have to deal with 800 plus students at any one time. But so far, the model seems to be working, and we'll see. This goes through the end of June. Then we'll have a couple of weeks to review how everything went, maybe make some changes, and then we'll be offering the MOOC again. But so far, it's really that facilitation role, the coaching role that has helped.
Thank you, David. You had another question. Are faculty paid to facilitate the MOOCs?
Yes. well, first of all, I couldn't in good conscience get anybody to do something like that. I do believe that if you work, you get paid, and so they get paid, even though there are some people who probably would do it for nothing. But the way we're doing it is they're not getting paid as a course. We have a system where we have e-learning associates who are faculty, who are typically leaders in e-learning, and we pay them an hourly rate for working with faculty to help them with their online courses and any issues that they may have. And we're using that same hourly pay rate for the faculty depending on how many hours and what it is they have to do. So they most definitely get paid.
All right, thank you. A question for Ellen. Ellen, Ivy Bridge College and Altius uses a lot of learning analytics to help students with their associate's degree and to transfer quickly. Can you tell us a little bit more about the learning analytics and its capabilities?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a broad question, but the analytics can tell us, for example, not just when they're logging in or how they're doing in a particular course, but as I said, it measures competencies horizontally and vertically, which is kind of unique. So we do have outcomes in all courses. We do measure the outcomes within a course, but the skills like competence, I was having a bad thought day today. I don't know why, but metacognition, teamwork kind of skills, those kind of skills, we have analytics to measure that as a student progresses through their program because we have rubrics integrated into courses that measure that and collect that kind of information. So the analytics are working on both of those levels as we measure students going through the program, if that kind of helps.
Okay, yeah, and so that allows, because I understand you have coaches for your students as well, right?
Yes, we have coaches. Every student has a success coach that works very closely with them, yes.
And I assume that the coaches get notifications if there's issues that are determined, through the learning analytics.
Yes. So the analytics measure a lot of things, not just the things that I mentioned. And we're also working with the analytics to, because we have so much data and the ability to draw reports from it, we're working on developing analytics for all sorts of things, including ID, being able to verify a student's ID in a course, which is always a big question for online learning, like how do you know that the student that's doing the work is the student that's doing the work? So we're looking at how we can use the analytics we have to verify student ID and all sorts of other things.
Thank you, Ellen. Sherry or David, do you want to talk about that question of verifying the student identity that's come up in a chat question as well?
Well, in 2 days we will be having a presentation for our department and for our management team on using BioSig, which is a biometric verification method, because we're starting to ramp up student authentication because we feel that we will have to be there in the future anyway because of accreditation and federal requirements. So we have a policy where we do try and encourage proctored testing as much as possible, whether it's on campus or in an NCTA environment or whether it's with something like ProctorU. And then the other side, as I mentioned, is stepping it up and looking at biometric authentication.
All right. Sherry, did you want to add anything on that one?
Oh, sure. I can. In terms of what we do, much of what we do is highly personalized. So, in a student preparing a portfolio, for instance, they need to be able to not only demonstrate according to each learning outcome how their learning aligns with it and demonstrate that outcome, they also need to provide documentation or evidence of that learning. And that could be a letter of verification from an employer, not to be confused with a letter of recommendation. Verification means the employer needs to be able to write specifically to the learning outcome and what the student did at work that demonstrated that skill or competency. So fortunately for us, so much of it is related to very personal information that's difficult to be consistent if you are plagiarizing. We do also use turnitin.com and register all of our portfolios there so that students would not be tempted to sell a portfolio, for instance. But at this point, that is the extent of the authentication. And of course, the students also go through a course with an instructor, which is very interactive. So they develop certain kinds of patterns in the way they write and the way they post that also help with that.
Thank you, Sherry. We had a question from Steve about competencies and OER resources used only for developmental and remedial work. And thank you, Ellen, for answering. And Ellen tells us that at Altius Ed, they are in the process of working with Harrisburg to build a master's program using OER. Certainly, I would just add that the TACT grants are very workforce oriented by their very nature in the allied health and in energy and manufacturing, and of course they are OER based. So there's a CTE, or Career Technical Education, also is looking at OER as well as advanced degrees. Let's see. All right. Good question here from Oktay. How do we make sure the assessment tool is valid and reliable? Would anyone like to take that one on?
The assessment tool for determining competencies?
Yes,
that would
be so.
Well, in terms of what we do at Learning Talents, I can just briefly speak to that. We actually use a standard rubric that was developed by assessors, and that rubric is made available to the students in terms of total transparency. So a student knows how their portfolio is going to be assessed early on. They know they can see the values and the dimensions that are going to be marked within the rubric. Validating assessments is not my expertise. I guess I would look to my co-presenters in terms of what the experience they have in doing that.
Well, for our MOOC, as an example, we use the state's own set of learning outcomes, and then we had subject area matter experts in the field, plus our team of instructional designers working on those to make sure that the assessment was as it should be. Another example is as I mentioned, we're doing the competency-based TAC grant, and that has input from an advisory board, so that goes out to the business communities to really examine the exact competencies that they need students to deliver. So that's part of knowing that those competencies and what assessments will be needed are valid.
All right. Thank you, David.
This is Ellen, and I'll say one thing about that also, because that is always a question, and it's been a problem from the time we've developed tests like MCATs and LSATs and Regents exams in New York State. But when we assess authentically, which is in problem-based learning, I think we get a better idea of real competencies. And so developing problem-based learning and problem-based assessments are probably one of the best ways. And then one of the things that we do is to, as I had mentioned, we have a rubric. So if we're teaching a physics course, we have the physics professor assess the knowledge and the skills that are related to physics, but if they're required to write a paper, they're also assessed by an English professor with a separate rubric, and it's sent to them to review the actual English part of the paper, so that we have experts looking at various components of a student's assessment. And then we have workshops across the curriculum to develop norming scores on things. And I think when you get a number of people together focusing on this, you tend to get more authentic type of assessments that can ensure that the scores are balanced across the curriculum.
Thank you, Ellen. One final question, because we are a bit over the hour now. We had a question for you, David, about what kind of support do the faculty designers have when they develop these courses with OER? Do they get help? Are they directed towards specific learning materials?
Yes. It really started over a year ago when we held a symposium that looked at using open resources and had 3 faculty members demonstrating the content that they had already created. And they kind of became leaders and helped develop more of a movement towards that. I will say we're also going to get training from Lumen, and we are also using some of the open resources, for example, the Orange Grove and the increasing amounts of resources that are being created. Plus, the work with Western governors was really extremely helpful in knowing how to procure and work with content. But we're not experts. We're getting more training, and I would say we're at step 1 on quite a long journey. But you know, we know where we want to go, but we do have to build in-house expertise.
All right, thank you, David. And I want to thank all of our amazing presenters, Dr. Leader Kelly, Ellen Marie Murphy, and Dr. David Schulman today for these wonderful presentations. And I want to thank all of you who joined us. And our emails are here if you didn't get your question answered. I'm sorry, but we ran out of time. These were just very informative sessions. And I hope to see you all in the fall at our fall webinars. So thanks very much, and I'm going to turn off the recorder now. We'll be on chat for a few more minutes if you have any last-minute notes or messages.